during the break chatter between Jennifer and myself, but Jennifer was a huge help in putting this panel together, along with Bruce and Halal Ragastari from the University of New Mexico. So that's been great. So I just want to run over a few introductions, and I know Bruce has already introduced himself and what he does, but I do want to just say one thing about Bruce that maybe not everybody in the group knows, and I only know because I was on his website at the university and saw it listed in his honor. So in addition to the multiple degrees that Bruce has, he was selected as the 2019 Tau Beta Pi Teaching Award recipient. And this is a college-wide award selected by the students. So we all know and love Bruce, but this is just evidence that his students also are very taken with his teaching skills. So good on you, Bruce. And then we will also have Halal Rastagari from New Mexico State University. He's been there since March 2009, where he serves as a research scientist and co-lead for New Mexico State University's Engineering Extension, Pollution Prevention, and Energy Efficiency programs. He has a background in renewable energy, bioenergy, and the sustainable management of integrated water and energy use. So he is just one of us, just in a different region. So we're going to start off with a little bit of background on virtual assessments, and then we're going to have Bruce talk about the Industrial Assessment Center and the intern program. And then Halal will follow up with what his program is doing in energy efficiency and pollution prevention. And then we will open it up for discussions. So, you know, site assessments are the cornerstone of all the services that we provide. And we've all been taken aback by the COVID-19 and the restrictions in travel and on-site assessments. So it's no surprise to any of us that we see all of these topics on virtual audits, the promise and the reality, and virtual energy assessments and virtual energy audits and the science behind. What you may be surprised about is the dates at which these came out. So this was 2016. The virtual energy assessments and the emerging technology was in February of 2014. Virtual energy audits industry fad, or the next big thing, was written about in September 2013. And then finally, the science behind virtual energy audits versus traditional audits came out in May of 2013. So even though we look at virtual assessments as a new thing that was brought upon by COVID-19, the industry had actually been moving towards the energy industry and recognized that there are other assessments besides just energy assessments. But some of the industries had been moving virtual even before COVID-19 was a thing. So it's just a little bit of background on that. The process of virtual assessments remains the same. Instead of doing an on-site survey, of course, you do an off-site survey, similar to a telephone audit. It may take the form of an online questionnaire, even a questionnaire that was emailed or mailed to the recipient, or a telephone call. And particularly for the energy sector, these questions would include construction type of the building, the age of the facility, what the occupancy hours are, you know, what type of building automation system do you have, and what kind of control strategies. I'm sure Halal and Bruce will start getting into some of the, perhaps some of the obstacles that online or offsite surveys entail. But all of particularly for the energy audits, the largest portion of it, of course, is data analytics, which typically come from some of that emerging technology that was talked about in the 2013 with smart meters that have been installed at the facilities that typically take 15-minute electric interval data. And then these companies have data software systems that will analyze that data, and the energy auditors can then provide recommendations from that. But in that 2016 ACEEE summer study on energy efficiency in buildings, the two authors, John Avina and Steve Rotmeyer from Abraxas Energy Consultants, did just a quick analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of virtual assessments. And you can see those, you know, the energy efficiency measures can be identified quickly. And since you don't have travel and you're reducing the amount of time involved, the audits are can be conducted at a fraction of the cost. You can also reduce the staff time needed because, you know, if you do an on-site survey, you're typically taking up 2 or 3 or 4 or more people with all the questions that you're asking, and you're, you know, having to have them take you through all parts of the facility. But then you can also do presentation of data from multiple buildings. The weaknesses, as I'm sure all of us who have done on-site assessments can do, is that there are limitations of the survey and the interview that you do from an off-site location. You know, particularly if you ask about the construction of the building, oh my goodness, you know, you might have a person there that doesn't know it, and you're no longer able to see it because you're not there. And, you know, then there's all these other weaknesses, one of which, of course, is the inaccurate measure pricing, which is, of course, integral to doing the cost benefit analysis and trying to indicate to the facility what their simple payback might be, or some other type of economic incentive for the facility to actually implement the programs. So that's all I'm going to start with. So I'm going to let the experts, and I will say that my program has not yet resorted to doing a virtual assessment, energy or otherwise. So I know Bruce has, and Halal has. So we're going to let the actual experts and those with experience talk about it. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Bruce, you can come up. And you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can indeed.
And then confirm if I have the speaker slide, or can you see my full slide?
We have the speaker slide. Not
okay. Let me switch that around. Thank you, David. I'm just trying to hopefully not. Okay, does that look right?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to touch upon several topics, and a lot of this we've just learned by experience as we've gone along. I want to start by just sharing some of what we've done trying to do these manufacturer assessments that we do, partially virtual, and we thought about kind of as a larger kind of industrial assessment center group. This is 19 different universities around the country doing them virtual. I'll kind of share a little bit, but to give you context, these are assessments where historically we've gone for 1 day. We've done some pre-survey work, and we're dealing with a wide range of manufacturers that tend to have fairly large facilities using over $100,000 a year of utility use, many of them $1 million. So they're fairly large, complex facilities. So let's see if I can get this. Okay, here we go. The guidelines the DOE put together in August, several centers, including ours, tried several different methods. They kind of pulled together and looked at it. And bottom line, as you can kind of see from the first guideline, okay, you got to follow your, your university rules and site-specific guidance from the client. That makes sense. There was some attempts at doing completely virtual assessments of these large complex facilities. It was really determined, as you could kind of imagine, kind of following what David mentioned, these are complex places. There's an awful lot that's site specific that's hard virtually to catch. So they're requiring at least one person go, one experienced person go in person. And I think from my experience, that really makes sense because there's so much you see, you hear, that it's hard to tell someone virtually to kind of show you with a large complex facility. There's an attempt always to have a much smaller team go. We're required to go one person per vehicle right now, maintain social distancing. I'll talk about the intake and outtake meetings, how that's changed, and kind of trying to include people remotely in our assessments to have fewer people on site. In addition, I'll kind of mention later on about some of the equipment they're wanting us to use, Studio Tour headphones to maximize social distancing. And some facilities have asked us to show a negative COVID-19 test before going. Fortunately, through the university, it's becoming easier to get those. I'm guessing as we move into the summer, they may be asking for evidence of, say, vaccination. So that's something I think all of our programs may need to start getting ready to think about. In terms of intake and outtake meetings, this is a program that, we do have pre-visit data we get, kind of a pre-visit survey. And historically, we would have a 30 to 60 minute meeting in a conference room with the client staff. We've switched that over to being the day before and by Zoom. We're really happy with that and want to continue that into the future. We feel like it really works better. We get a time that anytime during the previous day, we can find a time they're much kind of more relaxed. We have a little more time to prepare before showing up on site. And then we also normally would do a 15-minute meeting at the end as we leave, maybe at 3 o'clock, summarizing. We've gone to not doing that in a conference room, again, do it the next day by Zoom. We feel like we've got a little more time to prepare our presentation. What I really also like about that is it's easier to schedule at a time that the different decision makers for the company can link in by Zoom, and we've had some really nice conversations. So one of the things I've taken from this is doing more of the communications really by Zoom has worked very nicely. And we're able to do that to include our staff members, our students who are not physically present. Okay. My next slide. Let me talk a little bit about what we've done with P2 projects. I just have one slide. We really pivoted and kind of improvised this past summer. We did have 2 projects that we still had students completely on site. We only did those in facilities that had what I'm going to call natural social distancing. I think most of you kind of know this sort of facility where you go in there and you hardly see a person anyway. It worked pretty well, but our university made us put together COVID plans where even then a student would be working remotely part of the time from the local housing. That actually turned out to be a bit of a problem. And one of our students actually quit midsummer kind of because of that, because of issues on site, partially driven by working off site, leading to some kind of political issues in that case. Another thing, we had many of our projects were what I'd call commuter projects, where our student would visit the site 5 to 10 times, do generally day trips for data collection, but work remotely otherwise. We found that worked very well for a certain type of client, often smaller ones, or those that social distancing was really difficult at that site, and so our student would need to go in at certain times. Although what we found is that took a lot more time on our part to supervise those projects, but something we think we may do some of in the future, particularly where we have fairly remote locations of a client where it's not that easy to find someone who lives in that area, meaning a student, or find local housing. Let me kind of finish by talking about kind of safety procedures for all of these that we've had to kind of jump through hoops and use this to kind of think to the future. But we had to, and we still have to with the University of Nebraska, I think like most of your organizations, get prior approval for every trip and to have a COVID safety plan. You know, this is everything from having the PPE, describing how we're going to manage social distancing, which, as I'll mention again, that's actually been one of the biggest challenges we found for on-site visits. How do we minimize in-person meetings? I kind of mentioned that with trying to use Zoom as much as we can. We also found we were doing daily health checklist sheets with our students, and although our clients didn't require it, they seemed to feel much better about us coming on site when we shared that. You know, I'm not sure what temperature means necessarily, but they felt better that we were reporting all that we were doing in that way. And we had, for instance, P2 projects, the students working at home as much as possible. And we've had to share that with the clients and share that with the university before any sort of project trip on site. And this just kind of gives a sense of kind of some of the logs we're filling out, having the students fill out. As far as training, we've historically always had our students do our university online environmental health and safety training for some standard things, electricity, you know, ladders, confined spaces, you know, chemical management. But our university also had, starting this summer, COVID safety training modules. We're very pleased by that. That way we had documentation that the student had the training. We verbally talked about COVID safety in the workplace. One other interesting thing we had to do is have the students fill out kind of a short questionnaire, just confirming that they understood that they would encounter COVID risks at these sites, that the university wasn't able to manage those risks. And so that's the sort of thing I suspect there's going to continue to be kind of legal, if you want to call, waivers in that way. And you know, one of the biggest things we continue to notice as we've had students go on site is just social distancing, both with staff, but also our students. It was sometimes difficult as they would be on site to keep that 6-foot distance. A little bit on site procedures. As I mentioned, drive individually. We try to organize the visits always so we avoided going into small rooms or just had one person go in. We found for our industrial assessment center tours and even certain things when students would be at a site and they wanted to share information, we're trying to use Zoom. And we found in many cases that was successful. It took a lot of negotiating with clients on what we could have on Zoom and what could not be on Zoom. But we were working with that. And I have a picture from one of our visits. And yes, we're not at 6 feet, which kind of emphasizes just the difficulty, particularly with students, in kind of maintaining that. And again, we had to have face masks. We have those face shields that would come down off the hard hats, gloves, sanitizer, and so on. And I mentioned vaccination. I'm just suspecting, not knowing what to expect, that may be something we got to think about moving forward. Then the last slide is just on some of the communications. Nationally, the ICs have really been pushing this, realizing if there's more than one person going in, finding ways to make it easier to kind of be socially distant. They've pushed us to purchase some headsets that we can, you know, say give one to the client. Each, if we have 2 or 3 of our people there, we have that. And also something that then we can integrate with Zoom, you know, with a phone to broadcast at least pieces of the visit back to other individuals who are remotely engaged. We've been trying these out a little bit. We've had one assessment, we tried them out, and we felt like it worked fairly well. And at least our experience with Zoom is if the person managing kind of the phone and they can kind of hear what the remote people are saying, if it's someone who's experienced, it actually worked very well. And David kind of mentioned it's hard to hear even if they're close by. And yeah, that's another reason we've gone to that. So those are a few thoughts on at least some of the things we've encountered during the pandemic.
Okay, and Bruce has stopped sharing. So Halal, welcome to Region 7, at least virtually. So yeah, I've already introduced you, so feel free to hit some highlights of your career if you wish. Otherwise, you can just take it away.
Okay, can you hear me and can you see my slides?
Yes to both.
Okay, perfect. My name is Jalal Rastigari. I'm from New Mexico State University, College of Engineering. I've been with the university, as you mentioned, since 2009, but we have been fortunate to receive this P2 funding since 2000, actually since 1999, so 21 years of P2 funding. So we have done many on-site assessment. What's the reason for virtual assessment? Well, of course, COVID-19 is the main reason. We had cases that we set up everything. We did manage with the facility manager, made all requirements to go there, and at the last minute they canceled the meeting. So it's really difficult, to do this assessment on site. The other reason is definitely it's going to increase efficiency of assessment process. As you mentioned, David, we don't have to travel. Sometimes we travel 500 miles to go to some of these facilities. We don't have to spend night, we can save money, save on environment also is going to benefit from not traveling. So those are some good points. And also we are hoping that we can increase number of services that we provide. So we came up with the plan. There are 5 steps to our plan. First is we are asking for our client to go to our website and complete online form with their basic information. Step 2 is presenting P2 program. Then we conduct a virtual tour of the facility, and we present our assessment results in another online meeting. And finally, we do the follow-up and implementations. So these are some of the forms that we came up. We spend a lot of time coming up with the forms, but these basic forms are really fairly easy. Everybody can use these forms. We are asking for the name of the business, address, website, and they fill it online. And then we ask them to upload their billing information, and we provide sector-specific guidelines for the virtual tour. And the reason we are for the sector-specific guideline is because definitely food and beverage are different than manufacturing like other parts. So we have come up with a specific guideline for virtual tour. So we have our first meeting. We do talk about the P2 program. We talk about the benefits. Usually it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to go through the whole process and talk about the benefits. And also at this meeting, we talk about their energy. We talk about their, what we are looking for, about the hazardous waste, chemical waste, if they are doing recycling, what positive things they are doing, and we encourage them to keep doing what positive things they are doing. And then there are some basic forms that at that meeting we are asking them to, if they can answer those questions, we can fill it up. And if not, they can go back and answer those questions, later and send it back to us. So during this meeting, we are presenting. Also, we are collecting some data. And during the meeting, we asked them to appoint a representative, point of contact, somebody that can use any devices to walk through the facility and videotape the whole facility, their process, what they are doing, and we are asking to be really professional and honest, videotape good, bad, ugly, everything. So we have a good idea that we can collect the information. That's the idea for this virtual tour. And that's usually we only had one, but so far this is working really good. So we give them the guideline to what to look for, like looking for the building installations, for their heating, air conditioning, if they have freezer, refrigeration, if it is properly sealed. So there's a guideline how to record everything. Lighting, they need to record number of lighting, whether it's LED, whether it's fluorescence, and whether they are using sensors, or how is the situation with their boiler, with their compressed air. We want to record everything so we have a good, good vision of what is going on at the facility. When we collected all those information, we come up with a report as we do online on-site assessment. We analyze visual the data. We always come up with the good things that they are doing, like if they are recycling, how much they are, contributing to reducing emission in the environment. And so we always acknowledge what they are doing positive. And OFIs stands for opportunities for improvements. If there are some negative things that we can see, and usually there are plenty of them that we can help them with, we are nicely record those and put them in graphs so they can see and visualize that, how they can reduce their energy, reduce their waste, reduce their water, and how they can have positive impact on the environment. So at the next meeting, when we have sent them already the report, we have another meeting and talk about everything about their energy saving, water saving, hazardous waste, and the impact on environmental issues and how much they can save. And usually we talk about the recommendations. There are no cost savings. That is usually it's a process improvement. If they just adjust their thermostat, they can reduce their energy. So those are some of the things that we talk about. If they train the employee to turn off their lights, and so there are a lot of things that they can do that really doesn't cost them much. There are some other costs involved, which is usually needs some investments, like if they want to go renewable energy or equipment upgrades. We also direct them to the available resources like USDA loan and grant programs like REAP program. And most utilities, they have these rebate programs that they can, if they want to go from fluorescence to LED, they have this rebate that they can go and apply for those rebates. Water companies, they also have those. So we discuss all of this during the meeting, and so far we have done one. It went really well, and we are planning the next one, which is going to be in early December. By the way, there are like 8 other companies that they want our services. They went to our website and they asked for the services. The only unfortunate thing is that they are not in food and beverage industries that we promised to the EPA to do that sector. So there's it made us handicapped, so we don't have those flexibility that we had before, that we could do any businesses. This is the future plans. We are fortunate to have one of our colleagues that has a master's degree in computer science, and he is good in programming. He has worked with us for 5 years, and he is also double majored in industrial engineering. So he has it all, and he is working on this application. So when we have this application, it's going to be awesome because, you know, a lot of things are automatically filled out. Even we can have this final report printed, and without doing much work, we can do a lot of this data collection, optimization, automation, visualization, and scheduling virtual meetings. So those are the things that we are working, but it's going to take some time. Probably by next year, hopefully we should have this app ready. And thank you. That's my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any question.
Excellent. Thank you. If you can stop sharing, and then we will open it up for questions for all. And Jennifer, you promised that you would participate in this, so I'm going to let you ask the first question.
Oh, thank you, David. Actually, I did, well, so one thing back with Bruce's presentation, Bruce, when you were talking about the equipment that you were using for when you're doing your on-site walkthroughs, like the headset transmitter systems, is that a specific system? Like on your slide, you talked about how that was like a system that would allow for verbal communication, but do I understand also there's a video component built into it? So that's also the thing that you would use to stream your video feed for your remote participants? Or can you talk a little bit about how that transmitter works?
This is a system that we bought, systems that were just audio, but we had some students work out integrating that with, for instance, a phone, so we could stream the video. And that really took some students about a month and a half to kind of work out the details of how to stream that. And if that's of interest, I can try to pull some of the technical details of how that's done for others. This system, I want to say the one we ended up purchasing was in the $3,000 to $4,000 range to have 5 headsets, so it's not cheap. On the other hand, I really like this even post-pandemic, just because so many of us go into sites we can't hear. I like it from that. And the other thing I really like is even post-pandemic, I like the idea of instead of sending 3 people or 2 of us to a site, we could send 1 person and videotape pieces back. So I'm really intrigued with the potential of this. So I will try to get that and share that with the group.
And
Great.
first, I'll say that that audio system that you used, Nancy, what's the tank company that
CST.
Yeah, CST. When I visited there back, I don't know, however many years ago now, they were using that system, and it was so much easier for me to hear. You know, that was great.
Yeah, they do it for their tours.
Right.
And you know, when you bring VIPs in, and you're right, that's what I immediately thought of too. And so Bruce, you might even put that in the Google Doc, just so we, instead of you know, just so we're trying to keep those kinds of things there. But I think that would be really helpful. I'm surprised it was that much money, but that's good to know. And
Well,
I agree, it has post-COVID uses.
And just kind of on the cost, we looked at several systems, and what we found, we just worried about some of the lower cost systems, about their interoperability, because we've gone to several clients where we've used them, and we've had some that are wonderful, and we've had some of you may have had some you used, and you start taking them off midway through because the bandwidth between them wasn't good enough if people got distant. I mean, there's a lot of issues to find the right one.
I think we have a question from Jim Callier. He has his hand up.
Sorry, I was trying to lower my hand at the same time and I put it on mute. Stuff happens, you know. Anyway, I really like that, what you guys were just talking about in terms of the audio, because I used to be an inspector years ago, And I'd often have to take out my earplugs or hearing stuff just to hear what they were telling me so that I could do my job. So I don't know if that's I'm assuming that could be an eligible grant cost. You know, again, depending on how much all these systems, you know, cost, but just to protect, you know, either the interns or your staff. So, you know, consider looking into that just from that perspective. But anyway, my question goes to, you know, if you're P2 funded, you know, one of the big things they look for these case studies. And do you think you're able to get sufficient data and information from the company doing these virtual assessments to be able to put together a written case study? Just kind of a question. I think you can, but I'd love to hear about anybody's experience.
Well, how about we start with you on that one?
Sure. So this is early stage. So, you know, we talked to a few of those breweries, and, you know, it's pretty much going to be same as doing the on-site assessment. So there is not much difference. So I believe we can come up with the case studies, yes.
And Bruce?
Sure. I would kind of say it's going to depend upon your grant, kind of what you're trying to accomplish with your grant. I know with our grants for P2, we're going to have at least a certain amount of on-site work. We just don't feel like we can get away with that just because of the depth of work we're trying to do with these clients. On the other hand, I really think the virtual work can be a very nice supplement and reduce our travel, reduce the number of people on site, because we're looking even towards next summer on reducing, say, some of our staff who go out, and then having maybe the student use some of this to send information back so we can go on a tour without physically being at the site. That's kind of one of the things we've been thinking about, feeling that we know enough, if we get to know the student, we can kind of help them, help us look over, you know, look over the site.
Okay, so I have tons of questions. Linnell, you're looking at people with raising their hands? Are there?
Got some comments. Jean asked, will the app include some kind of measurement?
For the energy, yes, there is going to be some measurements that it can measure. Some no, we have to just give the data and, you know, just fill out the forms and it can automatically do the work. But like there are some apps already available that, like, if there are heat loss, it can measure it. So we can, you know, incorporate some other apps with it so it can also do the measurements.
One of the things I'm thinking about is all of these personal fitness apps and all these different kinds of things try to get
Those. Just kidding. Sorry, go ahead, Gene.
they try to get you every day to take a certain number of steps or to go to measure your weight or, you know, measure your heart rate or whatever it is they're measuring. And so they're continually getting you to have that data so you compare that from one day to another. And I'm wondering if you've thought about this, or would you think there'd be value to your businesses to get them on a program where they could see what their heat loss is every day, or see what their water reducage is every day? Or would there be a graph, you know, would that be something of value? And I don't know how hard it would be to do. It's just a thought.
Well, actually, you know, our university is doing something like that for our energy use throughout the whole buildings. We have an app, and all, but they spend a lot of times, a lot of money. Yeah. We don't have much funding to do, you know, very complicated apps. So hopefully we are writing grants, I mean proposals to get some more grants so we can get more help. And definitely those are the things that I am thinking about it to be, you know, more comprehensive and have a lot of things, a lot of data collection with that app.
I've
Go
got
ahead,
a
Donna.
question. Are you seeing the use of, there's a lot of citizen scientist tools out there now for measuring air pollution, particulates, that kind of thing. Are you seeing businesses use those in the workplace at all that maybe could be tied into your app and measure some things to show outcomes?
Yes, farmers already are using a lot of those apps. So it's common that businesses are looking into those apps. It's not something that, they are not familiar with, but this is going to be kind of specific for our purpose, for our P2 program.
I have a question for both Jalal and Bruce, maybe a little bit more Jalal, since it sounds like that a lot of your work is on the virtual assessments is primarily virtual. I was just wondering if you both could speak to like maybe the challenges or the level of cooperation that you've been able to have with businesses allowing video,
Yes.
like live video feeds in the facility doing walkthroughs. And I think some of that question is partially, have businesses been receptive to that? Do they have any, issues with that? But also maybe more so, I just feel like, it's one thing if maybe like, you're able to send one person to actually do the video feed. So like, Bruce, in your case, you have an experienced, energy assessor that's there that's able to capture the video and the images that you would need. But maybe in other cases, if you're relying on a company representative to get the video, I guess, how do you train them, or I guess how do you ensure that you're still kind of getting the what you need from them when maybe you don't necessarily have someone from your team able to be there on site, maybe doing more first person guidance?
Okay, I'll go first. For our parts, we also prefer if they are within the city, we send somebody to does this recording. And usually they don't have any problems since we already are taking pictures, we are taking videos in on-site assessments also. And, we are not taking any sensitive information. It's going to be all confidential. We make it clear that it's only going to be using for this data collection. We're not going to share any of this information. And if they don't feel comfortable, also we can take pictures. Like if they have equipment, it doesn't have to be videos. We can take many pictures, and we are doing a car wash like in 1st of December, and they already send us a lot of good pictures that we can see what kind of chemicals they are using, how much water they are using, what kind of facility it is. So with the pictures we can see a lot of things, and we always can ask more questions. It doesn't have to be video. If they are within the certain limit, we can go and do this by ourselves. But also we have the instances in the last one that they did a good job of taking the videos and uploaded to our website.
Yeah, to kind of share some of our experience, as you can imagine, as you work with the little larger manufacturers, we have a certain number who just said no. They're not willing to accept it. But we found with COVID, we've had fewer no's than we anticipated. I think that's gotten some facilities to kind of rethink that. The majority of them have been fine as long as they can limit where we do the videotaping. It's a little like taking photos. That's pretty common on assessments, and like so many facilities, there's certain key processes. They don't want you taking any photos. But there's other areas, as long as they can kind of control what you're doing, where you're taking the videotape, they're good. For instance, often we're using that to even show off nameplates, no different than photos we would take. In fact, I've had someone, for instance, on nameplates back in Lincoln, getting images of those from our Zoom. The biggest one of the big issues we've run into, and Jennifer, you kind of alluded to this, is actually, if we're trying to do something live, having a cell signal or Wi-Fi in every part of the plant. Some plants we run into problems where much of the plant it works, but you're in an internal area it doesn't. In those cases, we've had kind of a backup where we will get permission to do a little bit of a videotape then that we send back. We try not to do that because doing it live has been so nice because we have someone else looking at it. In fact, I've had several assessments where there was someone back in Lincoln doing calculations on a recommendation midway through our assessment. And that's really powerful. Or looking up certain sort of equipment on vendors in real time to say, hey, we can get this sort of heat exchanger. And so that really is kind of nice.
Okay, excellent. Great question, Jennifer. Sarah, that was just you scratching your head, not raising your hand, right?
Yeah, but I do kind of have a question regarding kind of building off of Jennifer's. I know that at least with like Bruce, you guys always ask for like data, like billing data and stuff in advance. But what if you need more data beyond that? I guess like our company is willing to share more of that with you guys as you would have questions.
We have found our kind of back and forth with the companies is no different than before, you know, that in certain ways doing the pre-meeting by Zoom the day before, I think actually makes things better in terms of getting the information in advance. Part of the reason is sometimes we do the pre-meeting the day before, and as you mentioned, Sarah, we often have all of the utility bills. We've kind of analyzed it. We have questions, and we have found by having the pre-meeting the day before, sometimes we jointly realize they gave us something that wasn't quite right, and that gives them a little more time before we show up to help get us the correct information to get that kind of rectified. I kind of have a question for Jalal. One of the questions I had is, do you have any lessons learned that you've come up with concerning giving instructions to a business person as they do the videotaping to maximize the benefit for you? Because I really like on our programs the idea of getting for certain things videotapes as is possible.
As I mentioned, this is also new for us. It hasn't been a long time. We have done only one company, and they, you know, the instruction, we knew that it was a food processing. We asked them to videotape all their equipments, everything they have, and go through the whole process and also all the buildings. So they did a good job. They had some professional person to do all of this, and that worked really well.
Okay. Any other questions? We have about 13 minutes left. I have some, but I want to see if anybody else from the group does.
I just wanted to ask if, sorry. I just wanted to ask, you know, you mentioned like the pre-meetings. Do you think you'll continue that on the online or like Zoom or Teams or whatever platform you're using? Do you think after COVID is over, you will continue to have students do some pre-assessment via Zoom? Has it been that successful?
From our standpoint, we're going to try to do that as much as we can, as much as the clientele will let us, because we really have found we like that better than going and sitting down in the conference room with the client. You know, just because we feel like we have a little more time, we can get the right people in there. I anticipate there's going to be certain clientele who just want one day and that's it. They don't want to break it up over multiple days, but we want to try that as much as we can to do it that way.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for us. You know, it's probably going to be, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be pretty much same for us because I think after COVID, things going to be different. A lot of people are going to use Zooms and other, you know, like Teams, and it's going to continue. It's not going to go away. Yeah, so we definitely like to do the same thing as much as we can.
I'm gonna set my TARDIS for pre-COVID. I want, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So, so for Jalal, both you and Bruce. So some of the research that I did on these virtual assessments back from 2013 to 2016, a lot of these companies are using these data management software systems to analyze these 15-minute electric data from the companies. So my question to both of you, do you use something like that, or do you just use the monthly bills that they give you? And if you do, and I'm sorry, my dog is drinking water now, and she's a very loud drinker. If so, what kind of software do you use, and how much is it?
Okay, for us, it's going to be only the monthly bill. And it's interesting that even in monthly bill, we can find some saving. If nothing else, they are paying taxes on their bill and they don't have to. So both in Texas and in New Mexico, they don't have to pay taxes, businesses taxes on their electric bill. So there's a saving. We are just go by their bill.
You know, David, we try as much as we can to get the 15-minute data. What we're particularly interested in is demand. So we better understand what's kind of driving their demand. We like to get that ahead of time from clients as much as we can. We're typically working closely with their utility provider. In many cases, we have the client ahead of time sign a waiver that lets us work directly with the utility provider. Unfortunately, in Nebraska, only about half of our clients are with utilities where they even have that data available. But when we get it, it's a gold mine.
Right.
And we actually primarily have used Excel. Most of the cases, we get it in some sort of form. We put it in Excel, and that's how we analyze it. We don't go to anything special, because often what we're trying to do is use that before the assessment to go in and say, these are the time periods during the year that are driving your demand. And in many cases, we've had several clients who've gone in and go, we have no idea why this is happening. Help us figure it out. But we know it's costing you this much. In fact, one client, we looked at that data. They were puzzled why they're having this huge amount of demand from a certain time period. Then that happened twice during the year. Some of their staff started talking about, they realized they're getting some of their grinders jammed. And meaning it was an operational problem.
Yeah.
But that was helpful. So they learned out of that the cost of the operational problems they were having. But that's a really long answer to say, yes, we love to get it, but Excel's what we use.
Okay, excellent. That's what we use too.
Yeah.
And Jalal, we just do the monthly as well. But I know some of these companies, I mean, they have like 35,000 data points or more during the year, so they can go on a much more granular level. So I just have one last question, and this is for both of you in regard to the pre-survey questionnaires that you send out. Jalal, yours looked, pretty comprehensive. And Bruce, I'm sure you have something that's equally as comprehensive. When you get them back, have they been completed fully, or does it take multiple conversations with them to get the information you need? And then how do you verify that information is accurate?
Okay, for us, it's, as I mentioned, we have 8 other companies. They are pretty small, that they are not qualifying. They really fill out the forms and send it to us. We are looking for we have another funding, so we try to help them. And that's really not very complicated forms. It's, they can answer those questions easily. It doesn't really take time for the initial. When we accept that, we can help them, then we send them more forms, and then they start filling those forms. We haven't got to that stage yet.
Okay. Well, we keep our forms pretty simple too. We'll send somebody a 5-question survey, and we will get it back not complete. And we're like, really? So sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm amused because, yeah, that's, when we went through our IEC training, there's a 5-page form we got. As one would expect, that goes nowhere when you send that out. What we've gone to doing is primarily trying to get a student on the phone with the facility and using that to kind of get information out. And we found that's the best way. And the data is never complete with these larger manufacturers. Thus, my belief for these larger places, you have to have someone on site to confirm, to talk with them. And as you all know, sometimes it's not a matter that they give you information. It's not everyone knows everything about the facility.
Okay. Well, I think at this point, I will turn it back over to Nancy or Linnell. Thank you, Jalal, and thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Jennifer, for this. I think it was a pretty good session.
David, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to try to get your attention. I think Jim Callier had one final
Oh, okay.
hand up anyway.
This probably is an easy question, but it sounds like even post-COVID, y'all are looking at continuing maybe doing these virtual assessments or some hybrid of having folks out there and not. And I kind of saw through the presentations that there's like, things you can fill out in terms of your 5-question survey or other things. And I know from conversations from the years past that getting clients can often be an issue. And, with COVID, we've been flexible in allowing a number of you to do these little short videos for, showing how to do an assessment of this, that, and the other thing. Any thoughts of doing a video of how to apply for either a totally virtual assessment or a hybrid where somebody goes out 5-10 times a year? It just seems like, especially if it's not on your website, if you can get it out to a broader place, whether it's YouTube or whatever, that could be an asset. And, I'm trying to, take my old hat off and put on a new hat for the new normal, because I don't think we're ever going to get back to the old normal, but that's just my opinion. But, just a thought of any thoughts of doing something like that in terms of helping to grow the client base?
So kind of a short video where people would hit our website and it would take them through the short application they need to fill out. Is that what you're getting at, the pre-assessment?
That and maybe even what a little assessment, the assessment looks.
What it looks like?
Yeah, like the pre-meeting, the questionnaire, things like that.
The
Kinda like
on-site filming.
videos
and-
that we have about on our website about, how to be prepared for a compliance inspection sort of type of thing. How do you prepare for a virtual technical assistance? And then
Or
just
what is a virtual technical assistance, and getting a company maybe to even agree to let you kind of, here's what we're looking at. We want, those detailed utility bills and sub-meter stuff and all that stuff. And we're going to want to set up some cameras because we won't be here to monitor different things. I don't know. I think a little bit out of the box of, what's the future? Because I also understood, in listening to, maybe not doing as many on-site assessments, other environmental benefits that you can get, Jalal, I think you said something like not having to drive 500 miles, and some of our states are pretty doggone big. I don't know if we can go 500 miles, but, you can go a long way to have to get to, what is it, Grand Rapids and some of those other places out.
Lexington, Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty big.
Actually, we talked about it. We talked about it in our last meeting, and we assigned 3 students to go and do one of the shops. But now we have restriction that 2 students, they can't go together. So that there are restrictions. And as soon as things gets better, that's a great idea, and we are thinking about it. And hopefully, we should be able to come up with some videos to it makes it a lot easier if they know how to do this assessment.
Sure.
So
Yeah, we'd have to keep it short and sweet.
Right.
Andrew, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of just piggybacking off of what Jim said. I mean, it sounds like the broader question is, in the future, what ways are you looking to, broaden your marketability of the program? And Nancy, I saw you raised a good point in the chat, and folks during this presentation mentioned the challenges that coincide with like an app development, as you were talking about, Nancy, or just the limitations that coexist with doing things more virtually. But again, trying to showcase and market, being strategic with that marketing program going forward, whether it's something like videos, or just something more generic via web services, that gets to that as well.
Good. There's something else in the chat if you're wanting just to unmic and share it, or Jeff, if you want to, if it needs to be.
I'm going to hop in really quick and just ask one quick final question. But Jalal, when you were discussing the mobile app that you're working on, I can't remember if you said, do you have sort of an estimated time of completion, like when you think you'll have that available to start using? And if so, maybe keeping us surprised, or we could check in. That just seems like a really interesting application, and I'd be interested in kind of following how that develops and how it works.
yeah, definitely. We think about between 9 to 12 months. That's because we are looking for funding. And we have some promises from the private companies to get some funding. That's the main obstacle we have, but it shouldn't take more than a year to come up with that.
Yeah, maybe you can update us. You're part of Region 9.
No, 6.
Oh, that's right. New Mexico is 6. Okay. If they do that multi-region, or we could tag back with you. This would be a good bi-monthly topic in the future. Maybe you won't be ready for it for another year or so, but that would be really interesting to learn about. What I shared in the chat, I don't know if you saw it or not, but we have a hazardous waste determination app, very, very simple. And where we've run into some barriers is trying to update it. So we had a initial funding to design it. We updated it a couple of years later. And then, Apple and Android stores, in order to keep it in their stores, are constantly wanting us to do something different to it. So I just recommend you get some maintenance funding that goes with it, because that is what we ran into. Ours was very, very simple, probably much simpler than what you're coming up with.
Okay. Is it still available? Do you still have it?
I believe it is available on Android. It's no longer on Apple. You can't get it, but if you downloaded it on your Android, it is still available. And it's called the Kansas Hazardous Waste Determination. If you just go to your Play Store.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I can share with you more detail if needed, but ours was quite simple.
Andrew had his hand up just a second ago. Andrew, did you want to jump in?
Oh, sorry, Lynell, that was from earlier. Again, just
Oh,
yeah,
well,
no worries. Thanks.
All righty. If there's nothing else, we'll just make sure we're respecting everybody's time. It's 4:34. David and Jennifer, thank you for organizing that session and getting it together. That was really, really good. I know Linnell has been the main person to do on-site visits, and she's actually probably done what, 6, 10, 12 on-site visits, not unlike some of the things that you ran into. But I know we definitely in Kansas learned a lot from hearing about those ideas, and so to be continued, right, as we do move forward. So next we do want to just give you a little preview of tomorrow, and Jeff and Andrew and Linnell, correct me if I've got any of this wrong. But we are starting at 9 a.m. We'll actually be opening up closer to probably 8:45. So if you could be on at 9 a.m. sharp, we will go through some quick introductions again. And we just love to know if different people are joining us. It's really great to just hear people's voices. And that's one way we can get a little more interaction through introductions. And then many of us know Rick Yoder with University of Nebraska, Omaha. He has a project on it's called COBRA, and somebody help me out. I don't have it spelled out there. Benefit risk analysis tool. And so he'll have about a 30-minute a presentation and discussion on that. Then we are going into some regional collaboration and marketing breakouts. And we're fortunate to have a couple people volunteering to help us facilitate those. So that should be really interesting. And we really, really definitely want your feedback and your participation. Well, you'll be put into breakout rooms, and then you'll be brought back together, and it'll be kind of fun, and everybody will be participating. So continue to use that Google Doc. Following that, we'll have a break, and then we're going to hear from the P2 Hub, and we're going to do some breakouts in collaboration with that as well. And then we'll wrap up with this optional networking lunch. And as I mentioned before, I am willing to stay on and keep the Zoom lines open as long as we would like, just so that we can have this networking opportunity.
Nancy, I would just like to mention, I know maybe there's some people that have jumped off, but anybody that's on right now that has not received their link and Outlook invite for tomorrow, please let me know. Send me an email or let me know right now so I can make sure you get that link. You know, there might have been some confusion. I hope that I made it clear that the link today is different than the one for tomorrow. So you'll need to access and use the link that's specific for tomorrow to join. And I know that if I don't tell people that, there could be some confusion right at 9 o'clock and a whole bunch of people emailing me going, where's the link, Linnell? So anyway, I just thought I would remind folks that that's there. And, you know, we'll be looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.
Hey, thank you so much for reminding us of that. That should hopefully, if you use Outlook, it's stuck to your calendar, right? All right. So any other closing thoughts, Jeff or Andrew? Anyone? And then we'll just take a quick break, and we'll be back for a little happy hour, whatever kind of happy hour you like, snack, and it will be networking time like we had before the meeting.
Well, this is Jim. I just want to thank everybody for the presentations and participation. This was enjoyable, and it's great to see so many new names on the list for our meeting. So that's one advantage probably of doing it virtually than in person, although I love the in-person meetings. But thank you all. from EPA, this was like, this is great.
Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate all of Andrew's support on this. He was part of our planning committee, and he's already been doing a lot of heavy lifting for us. We've been making requests, and he's flying them up the flagpole and getting stuff from the P2 hub for us. So it's been awesome.
I wanted to thank everybody. It's, I think everybody's done a great job, especially getting this all pulled together and not being able to see everybody face to face. But I think everybody did a good job, and I think it's been a great meeting so far. I can't wait to see you tomorrow.
All right. I will stop sharing, and folks stay on. I am